We have never been just a collection of individuals or a collection of red states and blue states. We are and always will be the United States of America. It's the answer that led those who've been told for so long by so many to be cynical and fearful and doubtful about what we can achieve, to put their hands on the arc of history and bend it once more toward the hope of a better day. It's been a long time coming, but tonight, because of what we did on this day, in this election, at this defining moment, change has come to America.
I'm Colin Chapman. Thanks for joining Agenda with George Friedman. Next week will mark 1 year since Obama's huge victory, bringing with it both hype and hope. Enough, in fact, to persuade the earnest Norwegians to award him the Nobel Peace Prize, one he admitted himself he'd not earned. In foreign policy, his task has been daunting, inheriting Bush commitments that could not easily be discarded. In his early days, he travelled to engage both America's friends and enemies. Both listened politely and continue with their old ways.
He faces two problems. One is facing the fact that the manner in which George Bush dealt with certain problems are pretty much the only way to deal with them, and he doesn't really have much room for maneuver. And second, he is trying to sort out the options that exist on certain critical issues. Iran is, of course, very important in that. He has attempted an opening to Iran early in his presidency. It was rejected by the Iranians. He then moved back to the Bush policy of attempting to build a coalition against Iran that would impose sanctions. That's run into problem with the Russians. He now has a decision to make. Similarly, he has a decision to make in Afghanistan. We are in the period of time of his presidency where simply continuing Bush's policies won't work, and he hasn't yet reached his own decisions. The next few weeks, perhaps, will tell us a great deal about what kind of president he's going to be in foreign policy when we see those decisions made.
Earlier this week, Obama made a surprise visit in the middle of the night to a naval base. The bodies of 18 soldiers were returned from Afghanistan. October has been the most deadly month, with 53 US troops killed. At his most recent public appearance, here with one of Asia's great leaders, former Singapore Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew, we saw a totally different Obama, restrained, constrained, almost hesitant.
Well, obviously it was a sobering reminder of the extraordinary sacrifices that our young men and women in uniform are engaging in every single day. Not only our troops, but their families as well. And so Michelle and I are constantly mindful of those sacrifices. And obviously, the burden that both our troops and our families bear in any wartime situation is going to bear on how I see these conflicts, and it is something that I think about each and every day.
It's not clear what Obama's strategy overall is. He appears to be approaching each of these problems piecemeal. So he is approaching Afghanistan as Afghanistan, Iran as Iran, Poland as Poland, Russia as Russia. There's a certain virtue of that. You build your foreign policy from ground up. But the question is, what is that policy going to look like when it's all put together? And right now, it's the very strange situation of seeing Vice President Biden making some very cutting attacks on the Russians recently, calling on Eastern Europeans to join the United States in supporting pro-Western governments in the former Soviet Union, while at the same time looking to the Russians to cooperate with the United States on sanctions on Iran. It's really not clear how it all fits together. And while people are ready to jump and say he doesn't know what he's doing, and his supporters are ready to say what a marvelous person he is, the truth of the matter is it is not clear what he is doing. It may well be that he has something in mind that he hasn't revealed, but he's certainly running out of time to reveal it.
George, it's a hard question, but will this be resolved by Christmas?
I think particularly on the Iran question, the president is going to have to make a fundamental decision. If he can't get the Russians to cooperate, and I think he can't, he will have to either accept the idea that Iran is going to become a nuclear power or take military action. The diplomatic options fall away very quickly over the next few weeks and months unless there's an agreement. The president, by default, if he does nothing, is going to be acceding to Iranian nuclear power. And that is going to cause all sorts of problems with other allies, particularly Israel, but also with large segments of the American public. So here and in Afghanistan, he's approaching a choice that he can't avoid, and doing nothing is making a choice.
Now here's Marla Dial with a look at what else is on the agenda next week.
A busy week for Germany begins with ceremonies marking the 20th anniversary of the fall of the Berlin Wall, and continues on as Chancellor Angela Merkel meets with U.S. leaders in Washington on Tuesday. Her visit coincides with the summit, where European states will try to hammer out a deal with the Americans on ways to fund climate change initiatives. Meanwhile, we'll be watching David Miliband's talks with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. Miliband's the first British Foreign Secretary to visit Moscow in 5 years. Lavrov himself will be traveling to Cyprus and then Bosnia later in the week. In the Middle East, Iran's Majlis speaker will be trying to shore up ties with neighboring Iraq, and China's prime minister will be attending talks in Egypt. The week wraps up with a meeting of G20 finance ministers in Scotland.